person company, and this was in June. And now by the end of this year, we're going to be 3,000. So I don't know how, but I've managed to attract myself to companies that go through incredible growth in a small amount of time. And I'm in the right place at the right time. So we're trying to think of a model that you don't just hire the team locally. Instead, you hire a team that goes from one data center to the next, and they basically move with the job. The market right now, if you are able to build data centers, you are at a premium. So, you are paying good money. They are well in demand. They are, if anything, just as in demand as the engineers are or anyone else that we are trying to hire, which is great for an industry that usually doesn't actually experience that type of growth.
And the partner looked at this and he said, you describe me your dream home. What would your dream home look like? And I was like, what do you mean in 2050? He's like, no. Like, what would your dream home look like? I was like, well, I have a garden. I'm hopefully on a lake or maybe on the beach. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Leaders in Talent podcast. And today, old and longtime friend Marcus Pask on the podcast. Marcus, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, pleasure to be here. I'm super excited about joining your podcast and sharing everything about my background in talent acquisition.
Awesome. And it's you're only the second person that I invited to this podcast that actually has his own podcast. So I'm probably going to be learning from you as well. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too. This is the first time in a while that I've been a guest on someone else's. So I'm also going to be picking up some tips on what I can take across with me. It's
great
nice to be here though.
Marcus, for the people that don't know you, can you give us a little bit of background about your career and what you're up to these days?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm now in my 20th year in talent acquisition, which is crazy. I didn't go to university, so started when I was 18 years old, straight into a recruitment agency and knocked on their door and said, have you got a job for me? And they were like, no, I don't have a job for you, but there is a company that needs an on-site recruiter. And this is 20 years ago. No one knew what on-site recruiters were 20 years ago. This is a brand new thing. So when I met this lady and she was like, yeah, can you start on Monday? And I was like, sure, what do I do? And that was just my first venture into recruitment. And so those first few years, I was figuring out what on earth I was supposed to be doing on site, hiring people, interviewing people with no training. And it fluctuated from there that I carried on in the agency side in the UK, working for a large agency called Hayes and working primarily with investment banks like Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, UBS, all in Canary Wharf in London. So a very different type of customer that I was working with. Learned a lot of good things and ways of not working at the same time. And then I moved in-house to Expedia, which is the equivalent to Booking.com, travel agency online. Spent 5 years there doing go-to-market or sales account management hiring, managing a small team across Europe, and then moved to Amsterdam, where I was lucky enough to join Miro, which is an online collaboration tool in theory. People call it something else, but it's still an online collaboration tool. And was very lucky to join them when there were just 200 people, and we scaled it to 2,500, 100 million revenue. I had a team of 25 towards the end, where I was leading all of global tech recruitment across the business, so engineering, product design, all of those types of roles. And then I decided to leave there at the beginning of last year, took voluntary redundancy and start my own thing. So I saw what I thought was a gap in the market, which was job search coaching and helping people out there who need to find a job and doing some career coaching. So I started my own company. And whilst doing that, I started my own podcast as well with a dear friend and ex-colleague of mine, Megan, who I worked with at Miro. She was the head of go-to-market recruiting there. So nice to have her on board. And then I got approached by a company called Nebius, who I had never heard of. And it was an AI company that said they needed someone on a 3-month contract to come and help them build the talent acquisition team and projects and tools and things like that. And 300-person company. And this was in June. And now by the end of this year, we're going to be 3,000. So I don't know how, but I've managed to attract myself to companies that go through incredible growth in a small amount of time. And I'm in the right place at the right time. So I'm right now still working for them, will be for the end of the year. And doing my coaching and doing my podcast at the same time. So I'm busy right now, but it's good busy.
Hey, and a lot of things to unpack there, right?
Yeah.
In terms of that transition from Miro to starting something for yourself and now being back at Nebius. Tell me a little bit more
Yeah.
about that journey and the gap in the market that you saw, and is the gap in the
Yeah.
market still there? And like, what's been the learnings for you?
Yeah, towards the end of my time at Miro and all the way through my career, I've noticed a few things. One, that candidates really don't know much about what happens in the talent acquisition, the recruitment space. They feel they do, but it feels a bit. I don't like to use this word because I feel like it's thrown around a lot. Broken. I don't think it's broken, but people say it's broken. And they were struggling with getting interviews, with looking at their CV, with having someone coach them through a process. And these could be very senior people or even junior. And so I saw a gap that I thought maybe I can use my experience to coach them on what does a good CV look like? How should you interview? We do mock interviews and prep. Use my network to help get them referrals and get interviews. And I thought that was a gap. But the reason that it is not that successful for a lot of people is that you're feeding into a market where people do need the help, but
Yep.
they're either out of a job and don't have the money to pay for a coach.
Yep.
That's one challenge.
Yep.
Two, the market is incredibly difficult right now. So as much as I can coach someone through the whole of the process, at the end of the day, I'm not the decision maker. So you're also not able to give them a guarantee on things like that. So you build a bit of a blocker in terms of the company is what's going on. So I've shifted my approach that I'm more of a career coach for more senior level execs right now, purely because it is coaching on a different level, which I still enjoy, but still something that I can add value to. And so I decided to do that because I just wanted to work for myself, do things on my own. And Nebius, the shift was also because I wanted to keep a foot in the market. I wanted to still understand what was going on in recruitment and in today's world. And I feel like AI was a huge place right now, these last 12 months. And I thought if I can join an AI company on the side and still keep up to date with what they're doing, I'm going to help my customers with my own coaching on the side, as well as my own podcast. So I was being maybe a little bit selfish at the same time, trying to just help my own two products that I was trying to build, but also know that I could plug my skills into a company as a fractional TA consultant. And fractional is another word that gets, I feel like, thrown around a lot in these last 12 months, but interim consulting, whatever that might be, that's the reason for doing both parts at the same time.
Tell me a little bit more about the podcast and your experience of starting something like a podcast. I know quite a number of people are thinking about potentially starting a podcast.
Yeah.
Not sure if everyone knows how or if they feel that it's the right fit for them. What's your experience so far?
I am the least techie person and understanding of how a process should run of running a podcast. So I actually had my wife help me to do this in the background. She hadn't run one herself, but she can get very deep into what needs to get done. And she's very good about brand and awareness and what that needs to look like. And also understanding what the gap is and what you're going to talk about. And so for me, a podcast was always something I wanted to share, similar to like my coaching that I did. I wanted to help people out there. So the idea of my podcast with my ex-colleague is give free advice to candidates in the market that do not understand what's happening in recruitment. So that is, we always do myth busting. So this could be around, okay, a CV needs to be 2 pages long instead of 1. Reference checks are really important. You should have your referrals in your CV. AI is only looking at your CV first, not recruiters. So there's a lot of myths out there that we wanted to talk about and give advice to. But the reason about starting the podcast and anyone looking to do it, it's probably the easiest thing I've done because for me, I'm just talking to other professionals in the market and you are hopefully talking about a topic that you're passionate about. So I think that is one thing. If you're going to do a podcast, you need to be comfortable about the topic and what it is that you're trying to give from your podcast, because that is critical. And then the next part is understanding how you're going to market it. For me, my podcast is not there to be viewed and listened to by 1 million people. If it does, amazing. But really, it's there to help those 1, 5, 10 people that are really struggling with how to find a job and need some expert help but can't afford to pay for it. So that is why we do the podcast. Ours is there to fill that niche more than anything else. But the one thing that I think we've struggled with most is finding the time to do it and being consistent with setting that in your diary, in your calendar. Okay, we do ours every Thursday at 5 p.m. European time, because my partner that I do it with, she's based in the US. And life happens. She's got children. One of them might be sick. I might have something else going on. We have to move it. Then we miss one. So I think the hardest part is just continuing to really do it in a seamless manner every single 2 weeks, once a month, whatever your rotation is, but also do topics that are super important to you that you feel is going to be picked up by an audience. And that also takes time. I'm sure for you yourself, when you're
Yep.
speaking to people, you don't want to repeat everything every single week or else people aren't going to listen. So you have to think about new and fresh things. That can be quite hard. So you have to be up to date and asking people in your industry what they think could be useful as well, or ask your audience at the same time. Have you felt the same for you?
Yeah, so 90% of podcasts don't make it past the 10th episode.
Oh yeah, we're on episode 15. You're on 25.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but what I really recognize is the consistency.
Yeah.
Is in the beginning we got right out of the gate, we got multiple guests lined up, and then it slowed down a little bit, and then life got in the way. It's like, oh shit, we didn't have a recording, and then a guest canceled last minute.
Yeah.
We had one guest that didn't get approval from his company all of a sudden, right? Like, so these kind of things also happen. But I find it a very powerful way for me just to have a conversation with people that I want to talk to anyway.
Yeah.
And to structure it in a way that I think could be valuable for the wider talent community.
Yeah, exactly. You also found a gap, and I looked at all of the guests that you've had. They're amazing guests so far that have a different perspective on our industry as well, whether it's banking or AI or finance or whatever. There's a real mix of people, and I think we've tried to do the same with ours, where we've brought in HR business partners. We brought in someone from compliance, someone from a chief people officer, like trying to blend lots of different guests and experiences. I think that's also been quite successful, and I see that in yours at the same time.
I noticed I don't know how you see that. Definitely the conversations that work for me best is when the topic is really front and center for me personally, and I'm generally interested, because there's also sometimes I interview someone about a topic that I know our audience would find interesting, or that person is an expert on, but maybe I'm either I don't know that much about that particular subject, or I'm just generally less interested in than some of the other stuff I talk about. And there's a direct correlation in terms of the conversation. And I find the best podcasts are actually the ones that are relatively unscripted, where it's much more of a conversation.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Every time that we finish one of ours, at the end of it, we'll go, wow, that was easy. And you've done it 40 minutes, you've been talking. Or a guest has been on and gone, wow, we really had to pull at that one and get what we needed out of it. And it was not really keeping to topic. And I feel like, same as you, just having general conversations, but with an idea of what you want to talk about is key. And I think for us, with the guests that we're trying to bring on board as well, is make sure that each of us do our research on them, because it may be that my co-host, she knows that person, is bringing them onto the podcast, and I've not met them. And so I then have to do my research to really understand who they are, what their background is, otherwise the conversation becomes very much between my co-host and them, and I'm coming in a little bit. And that can also, you can notice it when podcasts happen that way, that it doesn't feel like a three-way conversation. Instead, it feels very much like just these two people at the end of the day.
Yeah. Shifting gears, because here's the part that I would also like to dive into. Yesterday, I was at an event at MIT in Boston, led by Peter Demiandis. I'm terrible with names, but he's the host of Moonshots, a very successful entrepreneur, and he has guests like Elon Musk and Sam Altman on his podcast. And he's very future forward and positive about the future and what it has in store for us. It was super inspirational to actually take a step back, look at the overall landscape, and to hear him do a live podcast with three of his guests and think about what the future has in store for us. And one of the things that stuck with me is that they're very bullish around AI and how AI is really going to revolutionize work and almost eliminate every white collar job. That's the conversation that they had. That universal basic income is a necessity because we don't really have to work anymore, because AI will be doing the work. And how close we are to robotics taking over many of the tasks that we also deemed this is a human that always needs to do it. And one of the statistics that really stood out for me is that the expectation is that this year Tesla will produce 20,000 robots, Optimus robots.
Oh, really?
And by the end of 2030, they should be close to 1 million, I think. If I remember the statistic correctly, right? And to put things in perspective, and this was the part that really stuck with me, is when the iPhone came out, the first year they sold and produced 1 million iPhones.
Yeah.
And it was 2007, if I'm not blanking on the year. I think 2007, right? Fast forward to today, that is currently 250 million.
Wow.
Right? So in terms of exponential growth, and that was an interesting frame of reference from how exponential these things can go. And of course, with your work at Nebius, and you started 300 people, maybe give our listeners a little bit of context. What is Nebius? And why is it growing so rapidly? And what do you see working in that type of environment when I share these things?
Yeah, so Nebius, and I had to look this up before I joined them because I was also like, who is Nebius? In essence, it's a AI infrastructure company. So what that means is we're the engine room behind the AI boom right now. So you have all of these AI companies and models that everyone's talking about. They need a huge amount of computing power to actually run. And that's where we come in. So everything around data centers, the software around it, we are basically the owners of that. And so we're building, just this year alone, we're going to create, I think, 20 odd data centers across the globe. And the data centers is everything that helps the apps, the stuff at the front, the chatbots, the models, that will help store all of that and make sure that the infrastructure is running behind it. So the big companies like Meta, Nvidia, Microsoft can go off and do all of these things that they want to do with AI. They use us as the infrastructure behind it. That's the easiest way to describe what's going on. Or I had another analogy that if AI is the rocket, we're the fuel and the launch pad behind it. Like, easiest way to think about us as a business. And it's growing significantly. Like I said, I joined when it was 300 people. We're going to be 3,000 by the end of this year. And I think the difference is when you look at the growth.
So that's an 18-month runway? What is that? 24 months?
18 months. Yeah, 18 months. And when I joined, it was, okay, we're going to be growing to maybe 700-800 by the end of last year. And we'll look to be 1,000, maybe 1,500 by the end of this year. So within 18 months, they were thinking of growing double, which is still a lot for a company that's only been around 5-6 years. But it's growing way more than that. And the reason for it is that it's actually correlated to the contracts that are signed. And this is all public knowledge because it is a company on the NASDAQ. And in essence, it's linked to the contracts they signed with Meta, with Microsoft, worth 20 billion, 25 billion. And so all of the hires that we need to make is so that we can go and build the data centers to support the contracts that we've already signed. So a lot of companies, when they say, we're going to go from 500 to 2,000 by the end of next year, that's based on predictive revenue they hope that will come in and what they think about the growth of the market. The difference with Nebius right now is that the contracts are already signed. This growth is just to make sure that we can fulfill those contracts. So if you start adding more contracts onto that, the size gets bigger and bigger. And right now, within Nebius, and I'm sure we made it public not long ago, we're saying no to contracts at the moment. We are turning down huge business because we also do not have the space to store the GPU and everything, the storage that's needed. So we're being very particular about the clients that we will sign up with, which is why we also need to go and build even more data centers. And that is the biggest part of how we're doing it. So it's a huge, huge market that I knew nothing about. I still only know a crumb of the loaf right now. And it's an interesting place to be. Yeah.
Super competitive space, right? Like very niche talent pool. Data centers typically get opened not in the most densely populated areas, right? You need huge plots of land, very specialized roles.
Yeah.
Help me understand a little bit more in terms of that talent landscape, the fight for talent, and what's happening there.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting because you're completely correct. To build data centers, they are usually in the middle of nowhere, huge amount of land, and not close to a major city. Or if it's close to a major city, It's maybe a city that is not going to usually have the type of candidates that you are looking for predominantly. And what was happening at the beginning of Nebius was we would go and open these data centers, and it would be like that. We would sign up, get the data center, and go, hey, recruitment, now we need you to go and plan how we're going to fill these data centers and find the talent for them. Now it's switching where we go and actually get involved in these conversations beforehand and come in early and say to the business, you want to go and open up in North Carolina in this town. Okay, here is a talent map of that area. This is where the talent is. This is how difficult it's going to be for us to hire these people. This is the compensation you need to do, etc., etc. So now we're coming earlier into the table. To give you an example, we have opened up a data center in Iceland.
Yep.
Iceland, Finland? Iceland, I'm pretty sure. And the nearest town is an hour's drive away. And nobody wants to go to this town where we've built the data center. So to incentivize, we pay for possibly a car, possibly an actual travel allowance. We do not expect them to be in 5 days a week because guess what? In Iceland, it gets pretty cold and pretty icy, and sometimes the roads are blocked, so it's not always possible for them to go in. So we would also put them up in hotels. We will sort out lodging. There's ways that we're trying to attract talent to give them the right benefits to be interested in joining us, but also talking about the story in terms of how big we're going to be and what this is going to look like. And the fact that we can say we're going to open up 20 more data centers, we're trying to think of a model that you don't just hire the team locally. Instead, you hire a team that goes from one data center to the next, and they basically move with the job.
Yep.
So you actually rotate them around rather than they being fixed to a Carolina state. Instead, they will do 2 months building in Carolina, then they'll go to Arizona, then they'll go to New York, then they'll do those bits all around in a way for us to be able to retain talent and to not feel like we constantly have to start finding them in that place. Instead, we can revolve them around into certain places. It doesn't work for everyone, but it is a good way for us to attract and understand the market that's out there. And the biggest part I said at the start is bring us, TA, into the conversations way earlier so that we're not in a place where we open a data center in Iceland and wonder how we're going to now do it.
Because what I find interesting and what I also thought that was lacking yesterday in the conversation is there's a huge constraint on compute right now, especially with the growth of the models, right? If you look at SpaceX recently bought Cursor, or at least they have an intention to buy them, and there's a clause if they don't, they have to pay a $10 billion fine. And why this was a very lucrative and good deal for Cursor is because Cursor was running into compute constraints, right? And Tesla, or SpaceX is hoping to get their Colossus up and running in the next 12 to 18 months, depending on how hard Musk wants to push. And they actually have compute. And compute is one thing, but I rarely hear people talk about the people that need to be building these data centers in all these different locations. And yes, AI is going to take our jobs, but I don't see that being resolved anytime soon. What's your point of view? Being on the ground and experiencing this.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I completely agree. Like, it's not going to happen with some of these people that we need to find, because you need to find builders, and AI is not going to be able to build that type of infrastructure that is needed on the vast amount of grounds that we need to do it. Same with electricians and plumbers, and then you need them to actually look after the storage and everything else that goes with it. And so for us, the market right now, if you are able to build data centers, you are at a premium. So, you are paying good money. They are well in demand. They are, if anything, just as in demand as the engineers are or anyone else that we are trying to hire, which is great for an industry that usually doesn't actually experience that type of growth. But the market right now is so competitive that to stand out is really hard. And actually, would you go to something that's known as an Amazon that you can go and build one of their, similar, not a data center, but the land that goes with it and the size of a data center that might not be used as in how we use it? Or do you go for something called a Nebius that, again, our employer branding and our, careers page, our general branding is very, very small. Like, not many people know about us as a business. You would have
Yep.
heard of an Nvidia, you would have heard of a Meta, of a
Yep.
Tesla.
Yep.
People
Yep.
will go to them. To come to us is a different story. So usually then you've got to do something else to incentivize them. But the market itself is extremely competitive and moving so quick that I've also not seen as many recruitment agencies suddenly turn into data center recruitment agencies as quick as I've seen in the last 12 months. They've made that pivot from being a traditional agency that covers all types of tech to now go, we're just going to focus on this part
Yep.
because the need is there. And companies like us are happy to pay for it because we know that we're going to struggle to find the talent, because you also don't find that talent on LinkedIn. You find that talent through local market, referrals, etc. So also, how do you attract them is a very difficult thing to do. But how Elon's feeling and how the whole AI community is feeling, I don't feel any of that. I don't think our jobs are at risk in the next 5 years. Automation is going to happen, and
Yep.
that is already happening. And I'm all for it in the right way. But am I worried of the risk of a recruiter right now? No. I think the human touch still needs to happen,
Yep.
but automation will happen with reviewing CVs, with creating contracts, with scheduling interviews. I don't see that happening from fully AI oriented process where you're speaking to an AI bot all the way through. I don't think we're ready for it yet. In 5 years, maybe I'm going to be proven wrong and I really don't have a job, but I just don't think it's going to
And
happen
then this
anytime
will have
soon.
aged well. This will have
Yeah,
aged like
exactly.
milk. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. What do you think? Do you feel like it's gonna?
I don't
It's
think
gonna.
so. So here's and while you were talking, I was thinking when I was a student, I once did a business course at Booz and Company, which is a strategy consultancy firm,
Yeah,
and we had a 3-day business course whereby the goal was to design the city of the future, and
mm,
the time that we were designing for was 2050. And everyone looked at different elements of the city, and we would come up with business cases and would think, really out of the box, what would a city in 2050 look
yeah,
like? And I remember is that we presented to one of the senior partners, right? Woo, one of the senior partners, and and we focused on housing, and we had to design this render of like these huge skyscrapers where people would live in apartments and
yeah,
everything recycled and there was no emissions, and the it was all sustainably built.
yeah,
And the partner looked at this and he said, you describe me your dream home. What would your dream home look like? And I was like, what do you mean in 2050? He's like, no. Like, what would your
mm,
dream home look? I was like, well, I have a garden. I'm hopefully on a lake or maybe on the beach. It's like 2 floors.
yeah,
That's my dream house. I was like, okay, next one, same type of house. And then
yeah,
third one, also like somewhere in the mountains. And and then he said, it's like, but you've designed
yeah,
2050 that everyone's stuck in these skyscrapers and these boxes where everything is sustainable. It's like, do you think that the needs and desires of people will that much change?
mm,
And it was such a good question because that's not how
yeah,
we thought about it. We just thought about we're going to have flying cars, and that's where we were,
yeah,
and we're going to live all in these towers. So this is a long-winded answer of me saying is that I don't think there will ever be a desire for people to apply at a company that you're not interacting at some
yeah,
point of the process with an actual human.
yeah, yeah. We're seeing that actually. Candidates that will say as they go through an interview process, okay, what are my roles and responsibilities? Like, it's a good question. It's what we put
Yeah,
in the job description. And then they'll say, well, that's just like a part of what I do as in my current job. It's only 40% of what I want to do. What about that other 60% that I still enjoy doing? Oh no, we've automated that. Okay, well then where's the fun and the love to go and do that 40%? As me as a recruiter, if you told me I wasn't going to be able to speak to candidates, or I'm not going to be able to speak to my hiring managers or stakeholders or speak to the business. Instead, all you need to do is put it into a AI bot and it will send it out. Like, no, that's not fun. That's also not going to get people interested. So I understand where you're coming from, and that is also an unbelievable set of questions that he came back to you with, and really then gets you thinking
yeah, it gets you
about,
thinking. And
yeah,
there was another great example, right? Is I do see our professions changing significantly. Are we going to need less recruiters? Could
yeah,
be, right?
yeah,
Who knows? And we are going to be able to do more with the tools and the technology that's out there. And I strongly believe that our recruiters will be much more of TA operators, where the top of the funnel and probably that first part of the screening can be automated and can be done. So that the candidates that you then do interact with are the right fits, have already had a great candidate experience because of the automation that have been put in place, but that you are there to build that human connection and then help them navigate the rest of the organization. Is in the 50s, I think it was don't pinpoint me on the year, but let's say the 40s or the 50s. Telephone systems were still, when you wanted to make a phone call, there was a switchboard where someone had to actually put in, a line to connect you with the other person on the line. And there were 800,000, predominantly women, that were working in that industry, right? It's a huge, huge number of people, especially during that time. And then Dell invented the switchboard. So instead of a human, having to plug in these lines, the switchboard, did that automatically. And within a few years, no one was there working in these switchboards anymore. And guess what happened to those people?
They went and did some customer service about the
Exactly.
switchboard.
Oh my goodness, Marcus, you're going to be returning customer. Yeah, no, exactly. So because of this evolution, 1800 numbers were made possible because all of a sudden it became cheap to make phone calls. And because of that, all these businesses started to open up, and they needed customer service. Yeah. So these 800,000 people that were doing the lines, were then rehired to be customer service agents, right? Yeah. And with any technological change, this is what's happening, and we're just seeing it at the forefront of what's going to happen to many of the jobs that are out there.
Yeah, and I see it with coordinators, talent acquisition, recruitment coordinators. A lot of what you're seeing now in our world is scheduling tools that will help schedule that. But then I see the role, so it means that scheduling is, you're not needed as many coordinators because you've got a tool that can take a lot of that away. But instead, what it means is that a coordinator is being asked to make sure that the tool is working correctly, that the automation is working correctly in the background. So the role is shifting from I'm going to coordinate to I'm going to make sure the tool is doing what it needs. And then they can go and look at process improvement or look at some of the metrics of who's using it. So they become, as you mentioned, a little bit more TA operations than necessarily coordination at its core. So roles evolve rather than necessarily getting replaced in my eyes. And something that I'm doing on my own is I'm testing a lot of these on other companies. So I applied for a job the other day because it was a freelance thing, and it said your whole process will be AI done. And I was like, I want to see what this is all about.
Yeah.
And so I was qualified. So I was like, okay, I'm hopefully going to go through the process. Yeah. And I had first part was just tell me things that I had to write out, make sure that I put my hand in front of my face and I was still there, and I also wasn't using AI. And then it said, okay, an AI bot is now going to ask you some questions. And so it would ask me this question and I would answer it. And then it would say, that's a really good answer. Thank you. Okay, you've talked about this, this, and this. Next question. And I thought, as it went through all of this, asked me 5 questions. And at not one moment did it ask me a follow-up question. Instead, what's going to happen is the next stage is someone, a recruiter, has to go and watch my video and watch my answers, which will take them 30 minutes because that's how long the interview was. And I think, what time have you saved there? The AI has done it, but now someone has to go and watch it to make sure that I'm doing it. And they're not able to ask me a follow-up question about what I'm saying to really unpick the truth. And that is where a human is able to go, oh, tell me more about this. Or actually, that's quite interesting. What we're doing is this. Could you explain that? And I think that bit was very interesting to me to feel, is this a time-saving piece or is this a evolution that we've not quite got right? But I was in this limbo and not quite understanding what the intention was. But I was also then quite happy because it made me realize that recruiters are very much still needed in that particular part of their process, at least. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense then to outsource that. Yeah.
No.
Can you imagine? No. Can you also imagine being the recruiter? You have to then listen to the AI interviewing someone. That's even worse. That's even worse. Yeah.
Yeah. And every time it said, that was a great answer. Thank you for that. I'm like, well, was it? Like, are you going to tell me it's a bad answer? I also don't know. Is this just an automated answer? And that's where it becomes a little bit
Yeah.
impersonal, which I struggle with, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
A bit more
I
skilled.
turned off, with all my AI, stop positively affirming me with every
Yeah.
question that I ask.
Yeah.
Hey, so switching gears a little bit. This is something that
Yeah.
I'm interested in. I know at Nebius you work with Claude and co-work. It's rolled out
Yeah.
across the company.
Yeah.
Can you share maybe a little bit of best practices, or how do you operate that at scale? Are there specific guidelines? Is there, how is the work of co-work
Yeah.
being done? Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the setup.
Yeah, it's funny. We're an AI infrastructure company, but I think there was a little bit of hesitation to begin with about
Yeah,
using Claude and other tools across our business, which is
yeah,
ironic to say the least. Um, each team is using it differently. However, we do have general company guidelines that we need to follow in terms of the data that we share, the files that we upload, the things that we talk about, because it's going to be stored somewhere. And so if you're talking about an acquisition that's about to go through and it needs to read a contract or something or pick up the terms, that's data security that we're worried about. So there's a lot of the security side that we are still unpicking. And our privacy part of Nebius is really high. Like, I've worked in a lot of companies where privacy is important. I've not worked at a company where privacy is as important, as high up as it goes here at Nebius, which is amazing. But it does mean that we're using it in a very basic way, which
yeah,
surprises me as I go through this, that we are still wanting to do a lot of the things through normal conversations and not putting it into AI, and just making sure that the automation of things is done in a human way. But there are teams that are really pushing forward. So we have got AI teams that are looking at how do we blend the people org with the talent acquisition org with other parts, and it uses Claude to help with that, as well as all of our engineers are welcome to use Claude and other AI tools for doing coding and things like that, because every other company and engineers are using AI to use
yeah.
for coding, which surprises a lot of people. A lot of people think, "Oh, why should they be able to use that? Because that's cheating." It's like, no, it can help you with it, but you still need to know what the code is and double check it. So it's still fine. So to answer your question, it's in its infancy, I feel, with how we're adopting it, purely because of our privacy side. But across the business, we have rules and regulations that we all need to follow, and we need to make sure that if we're using it, it is used to solve the right problems and not just being used on everyday mundane tasks of reply back to this email or do X, Y, and Z. It needs to be done with purpose. That's the way that we're seeing it right now. But yeah, we're not as advanced as other companies are at the moment, and that is intentional. Do you see that different across other businesses and who you
Oh,
speak
it
to?
varies across all of our
Yeah,
clients, including ourselves, right? Is and I'm we're building a lot with AI. We've built a lot of automations. We've done a lot on the back end in terms of our
yeah,
operations that have helped. The difficulty about like how we work as an embedded company is that we work in our client system. So there's only
yeah,
so much that we can do. So it is predominantly, the freedom and the access to tools that we receive from our clients that allow us to do anything
yeah,
meaningful or not, right? So that is a bit of a constraint in the majority of the cases.
yeah,
What we are now implementing ourselves is that we're rolling out AI across the organization, putting the right guardrails in.
yeah,
Similar to what you say, is we need to be very careful with what data we can and we can't
yeah,
use when we work with AI. Um, and then we are now creating the context and the environment is that everyone that uses AI understands the context and the environment that we operate in as a business. And what do
yeah,
I mean with that is that especially now with the power of co-work and some of the more advanced AIs, you can really um, create context specifically for your user case, and that's
yeah,
where we've seen the biggest benefits. And the context that we're providing now is one overall: who's Matchr, what do we stand for, what does the competitive landscape look like, what does great recruitment look like, from an overall perspective, and then also how do we operate as a business, right? So what are all the steps that our recruiters need to do from a delivery perspective? And that's a big master file that we control, that we update across the organization. And then whenever someone has a question with regards to Matchr or how to operate, it will only pull data from that context. And that has been a big game changer compared to how we previously used AI, when people, you know, AI will be able to understand who Matchr is, but has no idea on how we operate and how we work. And especially when you take time to really read through some of the answers, you see that 70% is good, is kind of generic, but then that 30 to 20% is either wrong or it's just like, this is not really correct, right? And that's something that we found now to be very helpful with giving it the right context, and also staying in control of that context.
Yeah, I think for us, we would like to be where you are in maybe like 6 or 12 months' time. I think the challenge that we have is because we are growing so quickly, it is difficult to understand the landscape of where we want to be as a TA team, a people team, and org, because everything is changing so quickly. But I do think that there is soon to be this idea of what is our purpose as a talent acquisition function, as a team that feeds into that. What are our goals? What are our values? All of those pieces. But I think for us, because we've grown so quickly, a lot of it still needs to be built, and I think it needs to be very intentional, and that is also a difficult thing to get right and bring people all in to a room, virtually or in person, to have their say on it. And I think that is a challenge that we've had, that we've gone from 12 when I joined to 80 people in the TA team in the space of 9 months. Everyone is understanding what their job is first. So to then bring them on the journey of who is Matchr, but who is Nebius, what is our values, how do we work, how do we operate, we're also trying to figure that out. Also because the new leadership team is coming in that are managing some of these parts of the org. So I think we would like to be where you are, at least in the future. But for now, I think we're playing it safe just because of the revolving doors and expectations that are happening right now within our business. But it will come, and it should come as well. Similar to you.
Yeah.
If you're going to use it, and then you need to check 30% of it and realize that 30% is wrong, and then you're like, where is it giving me the save time, or is it worth me just doing this myself and knowing that I'm going to have to check it over? It's like, what is the value of it sometimes versus actually
I'll give you a good example which reason. So I spent probably 6 hours, if I add everything up, of giving it the sales context of Matchr. And also because in the beginning I hadn't saved something correctly, right? That's also part of like the iteration. And what I've seen is just AI is your best mentor and teacher, right? I just take print screens. Why is this not working? Why is this going wrong, right? And then eventually you get somewhere. And what I did, I uploaded all of my sales conversations from the last year. I had it interview me to really understand what does it mean to do sales within a Matchr environment. I uploaded 5 sales presentations, and our head of marketing created a Matchr brand skill book. Cool. Which I uploaded in the AI so that it would know our branding, our fonts, and how we want to structure our presentations. That probably took me 5 to 6 hours to really get that dialed in, that whenever I ask it a question, it really understands how sales works at Matchr. And what was interesting is that I had a sales conversation with a well-known global strategy consultant, and I uploaded the transcript, the 40-minute transcript, into my sales context, right? Mm-hmm. And I call my sales context Rob. And I asked it 2 questions. I said, analyze what I did well on the sales call and analyze where I can improve. And 2, can you create the outline of the presentation selling into their needs? And 1, it gave me really good feedback of some of my blind spots, right? I didn't properly lock in a follow-up conversation. Like I should have been harder on that. And there is a manager that the team had to get approval from, and I did a good job of asking what's going to be important for this manager, but I didn't do a good job of like where does he sit in the overall decision making
Yeah.
structure, right? So some very
Good
useful
feedback.
feedback. Yeah, very good feedback. But what really blew me away is it then created a presentation in our style,
Mm.
completely tailored to the needs of this particular customer. So every
Yeah.
slide was tailor made, and it did that based on the context and the previous presentation I gave it. I probably spent 4 hours then redesigning it to a level where I really was like, okay, now I can send it to the client. And it was mainly to do some of the context was not 100% there,
Yeah.
or it hadn't used some of our previous graphs that are powerful. It didn't have the rate cards yet in the deck, and I didn't have user cases. And the user cases took me quite some time to really, get it to a level where
Yeah.
both visually and also from a content perspective we're at the right level. Normally, I would have sent our standard deck with one or two custom
Mhm.
slides, and the rest would have been standard. And I would have used a designer for an hour or 2 hours to kind of like, make everything look nice.
Yeah.
Now the entire deck is customized, and I didn't pay a single designer to help me with anything.
Yeah.
And by the looks of it, they are actually going to become a
Oh
client.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It shows the investment that you do, that early part, but the iterations are super important. I've done it the same with my setup with my podcast, is that I upload, similar to you, uploaded all of my episodes that I've done already. And then it was like, this is what is important, this is how we do our descriptions, these are the topics we've talked about. And then it was like, okay, this is the branding. Can you now create a LinkedIn, graphic of 5 tips of how to nail an interview, for example? And it does it in the branding, it does it from previous episodes, it relates it back. And I'm like, you've saved me a good hour of doing
Yeah.
something that's quite simple for a LinkedIn post, but I only had to spend probably 10 minutes editing it, whereas building that from scratch would have taken me quite a bit of time. And now it's generating those as quickly as I need them to be done, but with the content that can at least be relatable to everything needed. But from your side, yeah, I used to hate it when I used to get these generic
Sorry.
ones coming through. No, you guys were pretty good actually. But some of them come through and it would be like one or two slides different. It's like, who is Nebius? I'm like, yeah, I know who Nebius is. I work there. Or it would be like, this is something different. If you're doing a fully tailored deck, the person on the other end of it knows that you've done it fully
Yeah.
tailored for them.
Yeah.
We've seen so many that I think in your industry that's going to be super important. So
Yeah.
kudos for spending the time on it. I think that's
Yeah. No, super interesting.
yeah.
Marcus, anything else that you want to chat about? We're like I love it. 47 minutes in.
47
Normally
minutes. Oh,
normally
wow.
I do 20 to 30 minutes, but this time flies by. Yeah.
No, listen. I think from both of our side, it's that we're trying to give information back to the TA world,
Yeah.
in whether it's from leaders or from other parts. And I think that what I would ask is anyone that listens to this, anyone that sees it, is share it, because we're trying to give advice and trying to help people. It's not anything else other than that. And so yeah, help those people around you. The job market is super tough right now. People are still struggling to find jobs. And I think the more that we can do to support, the better the industry will be. And we do still have a bit of a bad name in the industry, from whether it's the recruiters themselves or the industry we're in. And I think the more that we can do this, the easier it will be for us to change that narrative as well. That would be my
Amen.
ending.
Amen.
Yeah.
How is the corporation going so far with Matchr and Nebius?
Wonderful. Do you want me to share that? Can we quickly share how it happened?
Share a little bit. Now that have you on stage. Yeah.
So me and Adrian worked. I brought Adrian and Matchr over to Miro when I was working there. We were growing the team, and when I left and joined Nebius, we were looking to obviously expand vastly across the whole business, and we were looking for an embedded solution. And we met with 10 agencies or companies that can offer us this across the globe. Interviewed all 10 of them, which took me a while. Looked at all of those decks that got sent to me that were generic, to say the least, from most of them. And then whittled that down to 3 and did a full interview with all 3 and really went deep into what our needs are and what people could offer. And I already knew that you guys would be able to deliver way beyond what we needed. And at that time, it was 4 or 5, I think, recruiters we were looking to bring on board. That quickly escalated to 8, which went to 12, which Now I think we're at 16, 17,
Yeah,
maybe,
something around that.
something around that number. So like the numbers have escalated way above what we were thinking. And what we really needed was, and the reason we went with you guys, is that your embedded solution is everything that we need. You can do it across the globe. You know, in the US, in Europe, we are looking at very different types of profiles, sales, engineers, like I said, people that can build data centers. That is not an easy skill set to look for. And you guys always bring us the right data. You tell us how the team are performing without us needing to go and ask for it. We know what the market is like, and it feels like a truly partnership that we have right now, in terms of you want to know what our challenges are, how you guys can improve, what we can do better, and help us with evolving to a 3,000 person org. And I always feel like previous embedded solutions was all about give us the recs, give us the jobs, we'll fill them, move on. Whereas
Yep.
with you, it's more, okay, what is the biggest problem you're trying to solve? How do we do it all together? How do we go and find solutions? And how do we make this a real working partnership? And I think that's why it is working so well, and long may it continue for the future. And for me, it was a no-brainer. I'm just happy that you guys are doing such a great job at the same time. So
Awesome.
kudos.
Yeah. And honestly, why do some clients work better than others? It really is it's a partnership. When people ask me also in our sales calls, right? Hey, what defines, you know, a good corporation? It is really being treated as a full-on partner.
Yeah.
You celebrate the wins, you battle through the challenges, and that's how you come successful out on the other end. And testament and kudos to you, Marcus.
Yeah, but that's how this works. You know,
Yeah,
we've had honest conversations where things aren't working on our side and or if not from your side, and then it's like this is going great, and we just make sure that we talk, and we've all got the end goal, which is we need to hire amazing people for Nebius. How do we go about doing it? And we both want to get there in the right way, so we just work together to get it done. So I think it works
awesome.
great.
Marcus, where can people follow your podcast? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, Spotify, YouTube, Talent Unplugged Across the Pond is the podcast with my co-host Megan. And if it's any sort of coaching, it is shapingyourpath.com. And then you'll find my website for all of my job search coaching, career coaching as well.
Amazing. We'll put it in the show notes as well. Marcus, such a pleasure talking to you. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me as a guest. Good luck. Thanks, Adrian. See you soon.